Just heard Professor Eric Odrosai, Dr. Eric Odrosai, pardon me, who is a governance expert and a lawyer. In studio with me, Manasseh Azuri-Awuni. He's with our investigative desk at Joy News. Raymond Dakwa, usual suspect on the Super Morning Show, and Malik Abbas Dabo. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Malik, so there's a lot of questions being asked about an investigation into the original matter of the Ghana Maritime Authority controversy. Was there one?
Yes, so we know that the minister promised some investigation, but of course there was also an investigation which the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice itself launched into the matter. Now, sources at Chiraj is indicating that Chiraj sought to establish prima facie whether there was a conflict of interest, and if there was, then they can go into the matters itself. So, concomitant to that investigation, Chiraj then invited Mr. Kwame Wusu and his lawyers to submit the documents that were put on social media and which the mainstream media took and ran with, that pointed to conflict of interest, among other things. But the lawyers for Mr. Kwame Wusu, we are being told, challenge Chiraj's jurisdiction to investigate these matters. And it would appear that they are relying on previous decisions by the High Court, talking about Chiraj having to do investigations into corruption only if there is a complaint. Now, our sources indicate that Chiraj's position is that what they are investigating him for is not necessarily corruption, but conflict of interest. And with conflict of interest, they do not need a complaint in order to conduct an investigation. But that's why they are. There's a certain stalemate where Chiraj is expecting the person who is to be investigated and the person who is who is the subject of all of this discussion, Mr. Kwame Wusu, to submit the documents so that they can conduct their investigation and determine whether or not there's a prima facie evidence of conflict of interest against him. His lawyers are stonewalling that. They insist that Chiraj lacks jurisdiction to look into this matter.
So Chiraj is investigating the matter?
Absolutely.
Great. On this matter of submission of documents and Chiraj's distribution, a jurisdiction, I remember that with the Richard Anani case, the High Court did rule that Chiraj needs a complaint before it can launch an investigation into corruption.
Absolutely. That's true. And that's why I'm pointing out that it would seem that the lawyers and Mr. Kwame Wusu are relying on that judgment, insisting that Chiraj does not have jurisdiction to look into this matter. Of course, we know that many times without number, Chiraj's jurisdiction have been questioned several times by all manner of people. Sometimes they go to court. We remember the Baba Kamara case when he argued that Chiraj lacked jurisdiction to investigate him, and the court didn't agree. The court actually held that in that case, Chiraj had jurisdiction. Manasseh will point to another case involving Zoom Lion, which also went to court, arguing that Chiraj didn't have jurisdiction to investigate. The matter went to court. The court said that Chiraj indeed had jurisdiction to investigate these matters relating to corruption. What our sources indicate is that as far as Chiraj is concerned, to the extent that this matter is not stricto sensu corruption, they are looking at conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. The commission does not need a complaint in order to investigate and establish whether or not there is conflict of interest in relation to a particular matter.
Okay, so that dispenses off the legalese to an extent. But Manasseh, bottom line, Chiraj is investigating the matter and the president appoints the man.
And that is very unfortunate. And I'm wondering whoever took that decision lives in this country and whether that person has any modicum of respect for Ghanaians. GRA is a very important institution, and I remember early this year I had a meeting at the GRA head office. I was doing a story, I needed information. So after the official reason I went there, one person from the communications department said, well, those of us in the media should be able to support the GRA, raise awareness, because many Ghanaians were not paying taxes. So what I said was that as a journalist who did work on corruption, I found it extremely difficult to be able to tell the Ghanaian or run or help in a campaign to tell people to pay taxes. And the reason I gave was to ask someone to pay tax, you should demonstrate, as the government, should be able to demonstrate that whatever monies they pay will be put to good use, because people have to do their civic responsibility, their duty. That's what the law requires. The law also requires those who take care of those funds to be able to make good use of it, so that whoever is paying money, tax is not easy to pay. But if somebody is paying and they know that what I'm paying is to be put to good use, there's the likelihood that they'll be willing to pay. If, on the other hand, someone sitting at home listening to us today thinks that they'll pay the tax and that money will be wasted, then the duty, the urge to pay that tax will not be there. And this is exactly the message we are sending. This person, granted that there's even no corruption, if you listened to this man when this issue came up, as if he didn't care about anything, there's the money, we can use it for whatever we want to do, and that's the message he sent out. When we are talking about corruption, there's a reason issues like conflict of interest are also very important, because when people do corrupt deals, we don't often get receipts. So it is very difficult to trace and get evidence for corruption. Nobody pays a bribe or takes a bribe and issues a receipt. So these factors, such as conflict of interest, are all put in there to be able to curtail some of these actions.
Okay.
So when all of this has happened, there has been a lot of outrage, and the government of the day still says, well, I don't care about what you think. I still want to put this man as the board chair to take very strategic decisions for the Ghana Revenue Authority. I think it sends a very bad signal and discourages the taxpayer.
Well, Vitus Azim, Anti-Corruption Campaign, a former executive director for Ghana Integrity Initiative, will be joining us on this conversation. But Manasseh, am I to understand your position that whether he's found guilty or innocent in any investigation, he should not be appointed by the president?
For now, he's not been found innocent. We have not been given the outcome of this investigation.
Okay.
So for now, it is wrong for anybody. Because when you look at the issues that came, you are here, maybe hosting the show, or if you were to take certain decisions for this company, and then there is an expenditure that raises questions, and then we trace that expenditure to a company owned by you, the reasonable person in the street, whether you are found guilty or not, would have issues with that transaction. So in this case, we are even not allowing the processes to be concluded for this man to be declared innocent or guilty. And we know Shraj, it can take a number of years. So by the time they even finish everything, this legal tussle and everything, this man may have finished serving his term as the board chair of GRA. But the damage may have been done even if he's found guilty afterwards.
Interesting points. There's 23 minutes past. Vitus Azim is on the line now. Good morning, Mr. Azim. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
So what do you make of the president's decision to appoint Kwame Owusu as GRA board chair?
I think it is disappointing coming from the background that there were some allegations of alleged corruption against him and conflict of interest. We haven't seen that he has been investigated and cleared. And based on that, I think that the president should have held on with this appointment, especially as it is the chair of a very sensitive institution like the Ghana Revenue Authority, which requires a lot of public confidence in it for them to be paying their taxes and feeling happy that they are sure that their taxes will be well used.
But it could be argued that this is expertise that is available to the country, and we shouldn't let it go because, there's an investigation ongoing by another body.
Are you saying that out of 30 million people, this is the only tax expert, chartered accountant, good administrator that can chair the board of directors of Ghana Revenue Authority? I don't think so. There are several people that can occupy that position. And in any case, that position has been vacant for some time because the former board chair has not been well. Yet we allowed the position to be vacant. Were we waiting for this person to retire from Ghana Maritime Academy before making that appointment? So that argument has no basis. We have several experts in this country. And in any case, part of the expertise involves integrity. And so if there are doubts, if there are questions about it, I think that the best is to investigate, clear him before going ahead to make the appointment.
What implications does his appointment make on the work of the GRA?
Well, like I said, apart from the public trust, even the staff need to be able to convince themselves that they are headed by a person with impeccable integrity. Otherwise, the temptation is for them to also engage in similar acts, knowing very well that since the chair has been accused of similar things and nothing has happened, if they engage in similar acts, nothing would happen to them. And so it's necessary to have the public confidence, but more importantly, to have the confidence of the staff in their board chair.
Okay, and now the appointing authority being the president, of course, relies on advisors when he's making decisions like this. And we know not every bit of information gets to the president. Could it be that he was simply ill-advised?
This was in the public domain, and I think some people advised him against this. I don't have the evidence, but I know that there were advices against this, but they decided to go ahead and do it.
Who decided to go ahead and do
it? Besides, I don't expect that the Council of State, all the Council of State members can claim that they never heard about these issues and that they don't know the implications of going ahead to make the appointment.
So what of the investigation? What does this mean for the original investigation if this man is working at the GRA?
It means that the original investigation has been truncated. That's what it means. And that is the sad part of it. Because it means that the outcome is not important. At least from the president's perspective, it means that he doesn't value the outcome of the investigation. So why would that investigation go ahead?
But isn't this someone working in another organization? I mean, we have even spoken to sources at Shraj who say they will still investigate this matter. And when they bring it to a conclusion, they will expect the appointing authority to act accordingly.
Well, Shraj is independent of the executive. And so if Shraj goes ahead to investigate, we'll have the hope that, yes, whatever the outcome that they arrive at, they can at least put in the public domain, even if the president still decides to put it aside. Shraj would at least put in the public domain that this is what they have found and that he is cleared or that he's not cleared and that he's not qualified to hold public office.
It's a very naughty point you raised earlier that you know that the president was aware of this decision, of this investigation, and still made the decision. What could have prompted the president to go ahead and make this decision anyway?
Well, for most political appointments, especially under this regime, sometimes it depends on the party loyalty, probably contributions to the campaigns and all that. There are so many. There are various possibilities. I don't know with particular regards to this person, but we know that from this president's appointments, family relations, party affiliations, and contributions to campaigns have played an important role.
So the president has been looking at party loyalty and contribution to campaign over advice against appointing him?
As I said, I don't have evidence on that, but from looking at some of the appointees, some of us think that they are some of the important issues that the president takes into consideration in making his appointments.
So for Mr. Owusu himself, who knows he's an individual, he's a person of interest in an investigation as he's cooperating with Shraj, should he have taken the appointment?
Well, that is where you come to issues of integrity. He should have or shouldn't have will depend on how he sees himself. If he sees himself as a matter of a person of integrity who have said, please, Mr. President, can you hold on with this? until this investigation has cleared me. But if he doesn't even think that there's any investigation going on, or that the investigation has no importance, will not affect him in any way, why would he do that? That is the problem.
So what does this mean generally for government's fight against corruption?
Well, I think you can have a good, as good a guess as myself. It's another dent in the government's acclaimed fight against corruption.
What can be done now to remedy this?
Well, if the president is a listening president, he should be willing to withdraw the appointment, or at least hold on to it for now. Because when they started making noise about the parliamentary chamber, and the parliament decided we're going to drop it, the president expressed happiness at that decision. So what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So he should also listen to what the people are saying and say, please, I'm putting a hold on this appointment. And that would be something good, a feather in his cap, as somebody who has committed, who has promised, and risen to power on the promise to fight corruption.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vitus Azim, for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too. He's an anti-corruption campaigner. He's a former executive director for the Ghana Integrity Initiative. In a nutshell, what he says is that this is a dent on government's fight against corruption, because this is a man who has been investigated on a matter and should not have gone anywhere near a position. The man himself, he believes, should have even refused the appointment if he believes that he is someone of integrity who will not be affected in any way by this charge investigation. He also went on to make an interesting statement that he knows that the president was actually advised against this decision, and the president went ahead to make that appointment. Of course, he didn't provide any evidence to back that, so it remains at that. It's 28 minutes at the top of the hour here on your Super Morning Show. Enjoy 99.7 FM. I'll allow my friends in the studio to make a few quick comments on this before we go. Raymond, you haven't spoken on the matter. Government's fight against corruption, it's always a big issue when we are going into elections. So what really could be the political cost of this?
Okay, so for example, a government would want to consider what people think of it. The optics generally will be that it actually appoints the right people who are not corrupt, people who are actually supposed to be of high integrity. And the MPP consistently makes the point that we bring in a team of people who are credible, people who have the competence to do the work, and people who are of high integrity in all the fields that you would want to compare. If people of questionable character, if people that at least in the minds of the people, and let's not forget, Transparency International itself measures perception of corruption.
Okay.
In this particular case, if there's elevated perception that the gentleman in question has questions to answer, and yet he's been appointed to a very sensitive place like the Ghana Revenue Authority, where we hope that they'll collect almost 60 billion of our tax revenue and make sure that we can run the state the way it ought to be run and the way we deem it fit and should be done in the best places. There's a problem. The main problem will be that not only are people going to lose interest in the structures that we put in place, people will find it difficult to believe the government's own speech about fight against corruption. People will struggle to understand that when on one hand you say that you have the competent and people who are not corrupt, on the other hand your appointment, and signified by the individual I'm talking about in this particular case, to a very sensitive position of this sort, and we know how relevant boards are, to a very sensitive position of this sort, shows that you don't really mean what you say when it comes to fighting corruption. In any case, why is he not being considered for the many other things that any political appointee or party can do in government without necessarily heading an institution like that? And let's be clear, the board chairman is basically the one in charge of the institution. Ultimate responsibility lies with the board chairman in this particular case.
Ace mentioned earlier that he's the president's man.
Yes, but that's the problem. The president should not be seen associated with people that have such questions around them, or else that particular tag can easily be put on you. And what is the political cost in this case? it is far more reasonable for a president to decide that I'll let him hang around me in varied forms. Be on a committee somewhere that's innocuous, nobody cares about it, nobody gets to know, or actually lead contracts, or even get some of these things that politicians do. But appointing him at this time, and regardless of what people have said out there, sounds like a very huge risk for even a naive politician to make such decisions.
Interesting. Brutal realism, if I can say that, from Raymond Akwade. But I want to know a bit more about Kwame also and what he brings to this position. Whilst Raymond is pulling that for Malik, but Azim seems to point to the elephant in the room.
Well, so he points out that the president was advised, and he believes that the advice may have been ignored, and the president took a decision motivated by either the man's contribution to the party, his loyalty to the party, some other considerations that we do not have evidence of. And before we came to the discussion, I was pointing out to you that if you were to talk to people who work at the Ghana Maritime Authority, they will have so many laudations that they will pour on Kwame Owusu as evidence of work he did in that institution. Many of them will point out that the institution virtually fell into disrepair, that he came there and he raised the levies that they levy on ships, he brought in consultants to restructure the institution, to give people promotions that they haven't had in decades, all of that. Now, after all of that excellent performance, the man got mired into controversy that created difficulties for both government and the institution itself. Now, when that controversy necessitated an announcement of an investigation into the man's conduct, which borders on corruption, on conflict of interest, amongst other things, and that investigation has not been concluded and the matters brought to rest.
Okay.
Once closure has not been brought and this investigation is still hanging around the man's neck, it beggars belief that the government will go ahead to appoint him, regardless of whatever skills that he may have had, which he brought to the fore at the Ghana Maritime Authority. To the extent that he has questions unanswered, to the extent that the government itself found it necessary to conduct an investigation into the matters that came about as a result of the renovation and the programs that were held at his hotel and all of that, questions that remain unanswered. Why would anyone appoint him to another sensitive organization when those questions remain unanswered? If the government was minded, the government should simply have put out a statement to say, the investigations that we promised have been concluded. These are the findings, and we have seen similar things happen in relation to allegations about some persons close to the presidency who were alleged to have been engaged in some untoward actions. The government said that the CID was conducting investigations and then came to tell us that the investigation exonerated them. The same thing related to the visa scandal. Again, we were told that an investigation was conducted, the investigation exonerated them. Again, the bus issue, we were told the investigation was conducted by the BNI and then the people were exonerated. Why is it that in this instant case, we are not being told that this is the outcome of the investigation, and on the basis of the investigation, we have found the man to be fit and proper for appointment to this institution, and we are doing so?
That investigation is not over, at least a Shraj one. Manasseh, if you were investigating someone and he got a new appointment somewhere, what would it mean for how you would access the information and, the work that you're doing in the first place?
Well, for a body like Shraj, I don't think anything prevents them from going ahead.
Okay.
Once the person is not in that institution, they can still go ahead. But we are also looking at when the government is involved and when the government has an interest, it finds every possible means to shield persons that are under investigation. And this happens all the time. So I think the message this sends out is very simple. I'm not sure every member of this government is happy with what is happening. If you speak to them on the side, they are all saddened by this decision. And the first time this thing came to my attention, I have sources even within the GRA. They are not happy about this, even before this confirmation that he's been appointed. So I think this is a failure on the part of the president to adhere to the cry of the people. It is a dent on his reputation as an anti-corruption crusader, because when fighting corruption, your body language is very important as a leader. We haven't seen that body language from President Akufo-Addo. With his words, he often signals right, but when it's time to act, he turns left. And that is very unfortunate and does not augur well for what he promised, because in 2016, one of the major things that differentiated him from his main opponents was the issue of corruption. We're told he's incorruptible, he wouldn't tolerate any such thing. But if you are sitting down and allowing this to happen, we may not have traced any act of corruption to he himself, but the accounts have a saying that if an elder sits at home and allows children to eat python, he will not be left out if a roll call of python eaters is ever taken.
19 minutes to the top of the hour here on the Super Morning Show. Enjoy 99.7 FM. Proverbs from Manasseh Zuriawuni rounding up this part of the conversation. So, the information that we have, if you just joined us, is that Shraj is investigating Mr. Kwame Owusu, the new board chair for the Ghana Revenue Authority, for the controversy that bedeviled his tenure as CEO of Ghana Maritime Authority. At the moment, they are still in the preliminary stage. Vitus Azim joined us on the show where he talked about how this appointment as GRA board chair will affect, first of all, government's reputation when it comes to the fight against corruption. It will also affect Shraj's investigation into his matters as Maritime Authority. And then he also mentioned, interestingly, that he is informed that the president was advised against appointing this man and went ahead to do so anyway. He says, just like Parliament beat a retreat in the chamber construction brouhaha, the presidency can do same in the appointment of Kwame Owusu as GRA board chair. Still live on the Super Morning Show. We'll put a pin in it for now and take these important messages. When we come back, we go to Lekma. Still, that 7.5 kilometer stretch of road is killing pregnancies. We hear from some of those women and the MCE for the area when we come back.
Darling, I have to